Again, Lauren Proehl, thank you all for having me. So excited to close out day one in track 2 here. This is mostly a hot take presentation, so I'm thrilled to have you all here with me. These are lessons learned from the fires of response. So who am I and why am I talking about this? My name is Lauren Proehl. I'm the Global Head of Detection and Response at Marsh McLennan. We're doing a rebrand right now. And I've been Blue Team for my entire life. I realized now is a good time to do this talk because I've been in the field for 11 years. And I was like, surely I'm old enough to talk about lessons learned at this point, right? I work with B-Sides KC, SEC KC, Blue Team Village at DEF CON, the Thor Collective with myself and a couple other co-founders. And then I also just got named to the board of directors for Urban Trail Company, which is a local Kansas City trail maintenance and building organization. When I'm not doing all of this, I'm trying to escape computers by running long distances in the woods. And clearly it's working because I'm here talking to you today instead of out in nature. So I grew up a SOC analyst, and I was raised in SOC analysis by a Marine, and I was taught every Marine a rifleman. And I believe every responder a SOC analyst. All of our Blue Team folks should know the basics of SOC analysis. All of the work that we are doing as Blue Teamers is in support of our SOC analysts. They're the ones who are at 3 a.m, are getting all the lights lit up in their ArcSight queues, Splunk queues, insert your favorite SIM here. And they need to know whether or not this is something we should actually be worried about, or if I can close it as a false positive for the 500th time. So whether you're in CTI, whether you're in threat hunting, whether you're in detection engineering, ultimately all of our work is coming together to support our frontline defenders and our SOC analysts. So lesson number 1, AI is your friend and your foe. Ever since I got out of college, I've heard that AI is going to replace the SOC analyst. And that's been going on since 2015. And here we are in 2025, and I see the same headlines. I see the same vendor pitches in all of the showroom floors. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think the SOC analyst is getting replaced anytime soon. However, it is up to us in order to leverage AI because it's not going anywhere anytime soon, and there's tons of potential. So here, I'm mostly a manager now, so they don't let me near active keyboards because I like to wildcard my searches and cost my company a ton of money. So it takes me a little bit to understand whether or not something is bad. So I am here. This is an actual live query from a non-logged in free ChatGPT session that I stood up. I went to DFIR report, picked a report from August of this year. I picked an IOC and I was like, hey, can you tell me if this is malicious or not, or is this a false positive? And it came back with this, a whole lovely dissertation, and this will continue on the next slide, of, yeah, this is very likely malicious, and here's why it is malicious, and here's what you should care about. Again, I'm not logged into ChatGPT. I'm not paying for anything for this. It's a 30-second query. And so I ask it for more information. Well, why is this malicious? What's the red flags here, right? We're backing up to a local share, we're targeting NTDS, all this fun stuff, all stuff that most of you in this room probably already know. But there was a time where you didn't know it. There was a time where you were coming out of college or coming out of high school or getting into your first ticketing queue, and you didn't know whether or not this was bad. And so now we have AI to kind of supercharge our analysis and maybe save your tier 2s or your incident response team from an escalation at 3 a.m. when you've got a robot SD to ask. ChatGPT also helped out and said, here's what you should do next. Here's how you should drive this. Now, this is super, super high level, right? We're talking about isolating the host, go search your EDR, check user context, all of this. If you remember from my prompt, I just asked, is this malicious? Is this false positive? Very, very simple. But there's a lot more work that you can do with prompting to get these next step investigations a little more in depth and help drive your analysis further. Again, I don't trust ChatGPT to go quarantine a host right now, or call my CEO and say, hey, you got malware on your system because you clicked a phishing link and I'm going to need to take that from you. But it is really good at pointing out these red flags in certain areas that my analyst should go investigate further and cutting down on that time to investigate. It's also your foe, though. Raise your hand if any of you are reading the Anthropic threat reports that they are publishing on a monthly basis. Yeah, a couple of you. For the rest of you, you should absolutely read it. The threat actors have long known about AI. They've found it, they're using it, and our friends at Anthropic and now ChatGPT and OpenAI are publishing how the threat actors are using AI. And it is terrifying. They really are foe. This isn't just some kind of shtick that CTI vendors are going to try to sell you, more CTI packages with. These are real examples from real threat actors that Anthropic saw using Claude for nefarious purposes. So this first one in the black, threat actors are using MCP servers basically as command and control instance here. So they've set up a MCP server. They can use this to interact and get host information with the host that they have compromised. It's just making calls back to Claude. Nothing suspicious here. Are you guys going to block Claude in your environment in full? Maybe, maybe not. On the right-hand side, you have a threat actor asking how to use the Outlook application and also how to do a whole bunch of other things with dependencies and programming. And so this barrier to knowledge for what threat actors need to know in order to impact our environment is coming down significantly. So not only are they stealthily hiding in our environments, they also don't really need to know that much to end up impacting us pretty heavily. Make new friends and keep the old. How many of you hate talking to people? Yeah, there we go. All right. I'm sorry to say, you have to talk to people in this industry, especially in a response field. Unfortunately, as much as we all love talking to lawyers, they can be some of your best friends in the industry. And we'll get into why that's important as we get down in this presentation. But help desk, your execs, lawyers, HR, ER, finance, you need to make friends with all of the people in your organization. And it shouldn't be at 3 a.m. when everything's on fire and you need help putting something out. I remember when I was early on in my career and made friends with our chief legal officer at the time. And she would always tell us that she didn't want to know about what we were doing involved with hacking, but mainly wanted to understand whether or not we were protecting the organization. And so it's important that you make these contacts before you actually end up needing them. This also goes for the folks in this room around you, outside and in the industry. I always say that we can only do this one way, and it's together. If you want to sit in a dark room and look at ArcSight queues by yourself, best of luck, but it's going to be a really, really long and difficult career for you. I would highly recommend making some friends along the way. The first 5 minutes matter as much as the next 5 days. When I talk about incident response, you'll hear a lot of people talk about how IR is a marathon. And for those of you who dealt with NPM in the last few months or are still dealing with NPM, you will know it is absolutely a marathon. But it's also a sprint. It's really, really easy for you to say, hey, everything is on fire. If I don't contain this system right now, we're losing $500,000, $1 million, $40 million. I need to move faster. And that matters significantly. But you need to keep in mind both the pace at which you are moving immediately and then in the long term. And one of the ways to do this is by documenting. I know that we all hate it. I know personally I hate it, but it is your best friend. Number one, if something is not in a ticket, it did not happen. I don't care if you contained a host. If I don't have a date stamp for when that host was contained, that host is not contained for all intents and purposes. Your analyst should be able to follow behind you in the ticket notes and replicate everything you did. And that's not just from an incident response perspective. For threat hunters out there, I spent a lot of my career doing threat hunting. You should be able to have somebody replicate your threat hunt just by your case notes alone. Hopefully you don't have to redo your threat hunts on that consistent of a basis, but it's definitely a good practice. Some of the key things you need: an incident response plan. You all know this. There's dozens of documents out there telling you what documentation that you need. Make sure you're keeping it updated annually. Make sure that you're testing your IRP annually. I hope you all are doing that. And then playbooks. This is how to do what you need to do, How do you analyze this specific event? If your playbook is a dissertation, it's going to be very, very hard for you to act quickly and make those first 5 minutes matter. I've seen playbooks that were 45 pages in length. I've seen playbooks that are half a page in length. Both ended up leaving more questions than answers for analysts that were following them. You should have your roles and responsibilities documented. That's a no-brainer. If you're tiering your SOC, you should have roles and responsibilities documented. And then also expectations. I don't find that there's a lot of response teams that are doing this, but it's totally normal to say, hey, you should make sure that you're announcing when you're taking a lunch, or all analysts are expected to contribute to tuning the detections that are in your SIM, right? A lot of these are unspoken rules for us, but what I've found is if they're not written down, you can't hold anyone to them, and it becomes up to your trainer. And Bob forgot to tell someone that they need to write detections or expand detections. Your contacts, if you don't have a Rolodex of who you need to contact in your organization during an incident, you're missing out. There's tons of opportunities there. And then my favorite is inputs and workflows. Do you know where all of your security tools are being fed into and how they can be analyzed on a given day? I'm assuming not everybody does, because it's very much like a CMDB that's constantly incomplete. But this exercise will help you understand where all of your tools are going and maybe give you some insight into things that aren't being monitored. Are your WAFs going into the SIM, or are they off on an island completely unconfigured and nobody knows what to do with them? You have to go through these exercises of inventorying to understand what's happening. Your charter, your mission, shift schedules, and then expectations and exceptions is the big one. If you have people that are marking things as false positive globally for your environment, are those documented? Do you know that you have log4j rules that are suppressed 5-6 years later after that? Are they still legitimate? There's quite a bit in terms of exceptions that can end up becoming a breeding ground for malicious activity or where threat actors like to hide. So make sure you're going through those. Chris Sanders wrote a really awesome blog about mental models back in 2019, and that shaped a lot of my analysis and how I approached doing response. So I chunk things down into suspicious behaviors and then decision trees. So a lot of us think really, really fast. We're really good because we've done this for a long time and repeat over and over and over again. And then you have an analyst who comes straight into the field and said, well, why did you do what you did? And your answer of, well, that's what I've always done, is going to make them, like a 5-year-old, ask again, why is this something that you have always done? And I found that if I didn't document why I was picking up on these malicious indicators, that I couldn't train the people that were coming behind me, and then I could never go do more interesting work. So I started to model out, well, a new alert comes in. If it's after hours, to me, that's suspicious, and that raises the maliciousness level on my end. If no, whatever, I'll just go through the rest of my mental modeling and things that I need to check. But this helped me slow down and translate the gut feeling that we all have into something that was actionable and replicatable for my analysts and for my response team. Here's a whole bunch of other gut feelings that we all do, whether or not you like it, and that we check in the beginning of an investigation or in the beginning of an incident response. And these are all things that can go one way or the other, make us understand that something is more malicious or less malicious, but it's time and time again, we've practiced this and we've gone over this. And if we haven't written this down and shared this with our team members or with our analysts, they're not going to learn from how we've developed our gut feelings. There are quite a bit more. These are just some of the really initial ones. I like to call this alert normalization. So every single time when I look at an alert, this is all the stuff that I look at and determine what I need to do next. All right, time for a hot take. Regulators scare me more than the adversaries do right now. So this is a map of data protection laws and the coverage level of those data protection laws and whether they're strong or weak. This is data protection only, so this is not cybersecurity specific regulation. But have you ever thought about if you have an IR in China and whether or not you need to get on that host in China and pull logs out of there, whether or not you would be committing an illegal action by doing that? I have, and unfortunately, you would. So I believe that regulators mean well, but if I have to choose in an incident between reporting to a regulator in 72 hours versus containing an adversary in 72 hours, somewhere along the lines, our priorities have gotten mixed up and we're prioritizing the wrong things. There are many of you out there that are single or dual security person shops. I cannot imagine what you have to do when someone from a larger organization is saying that they're concerned about meeting regulation times. Here's a fun one. Here's the cumulative growth of cybersecurity and data protection regulation since 2016. We're winning in North America, and this includes state by state. So just like our China problem before, now you have state considerations, whether or not you need to report specific breaches to state regulators as well as federal regulators. How many CISOs do we have in the room? Couple. How are you guys feeling about the SEC lawsuits with SolarWinds? Oh, great. It's always fun when you can name a security professional and hold them accountable for what was said in the middle of an incident response when you give them a ticking timeline to work under. This gets better as we work with our government officials and our elected officials, and as our companies, I think, put more and more pressure on responding to these regulations that are coming out. But as we can see from this growth, there are more and more laws, and it's only getting worse. You see this expanding into APAC regions, into EMEA. Thank you, Dora. Really, really, really happy about that one. You have to make friends with your lawyers, and you have to really understand how these regulations are framed and what your obligation is as a responder. You should have legal teams that are helping you, but ultimately, at this point, the regulators are going to cost you more than some of these adversaries. If that wasn't enough, we're adding more laws on with AI. Some of the AI laws also have cybersecurity elements associated with this. Primarily if you're using AI to produce works or if you are using AI to train data. So for some of us, this isn't relevant. Others of us, it is relevant. But again, the regulations continue while the adversaries are only getting faster. And speaking of adversaries of only getting faster, how many of you saw this awesome graphic from Google Threat Intelligence about exploits, the time to exploit now being in the negatives? Didn't know time travel was possible. I did not know that we could have things exploited before I knew about them, but here we are. Welcome to 2025, everyone. Intelligence is no longer optional. When I was coming into the field, CTI was seen as this awesome unicorn thing that you had and you were a specialized shop or a large organization or you could afford to pay for it. Unfortunately, CTI is no longer an optional thing for most of our response teams. And I would dare say all of our response teams. And it's precisely because this -1 number right here. Things are being exploited before you hear about them in the news. Every single day I'm working with my CTI contacts and we're talking about things that are happening before they are published and before my dad knows about them or before my organization knows about them. And so the only way to get ahead and continue up with the pace at which threat actors are attacking is to have an intelligence-driven organization. Now, you might say, well, Lauren, I cannot afford an intelligence-driven organization. CrowdStrike asked me for $1.7 million for finished intelligence, and we don't have that kind of money. And to that I will say, completely reasonable. And not all of you can afford to hire dedicated threat intelligence professionals in your organization. But I would encourage you to shop around. There's several MDR providers right now if you have a hybrid SOC that are providing intelligence services. There's dedicated Intel service shops like Palo, like CrowdStrike, like Google that are out there. And you can't afford not to. If we trace all of our lovely CVE publications, not only are they being exploited before we know about them, they are also being created and discovered and announced in numbers we have never seen before. I don't know how many of your vulnerability management programs have slept a full night in the last 4 years. If they have, I would love to talk to you in the hallway after this. But every single year we have seen record-breaking CVEs. Now, not all of those are exploitable. They're not all RCEs, right? They're not all things that we should care about. But more and more they're being slapped with the KEV label, and they are something that you need to patch now or else. When everything becomes a patch now or else, how are you prioritizing what actually needs to be patched now? And the only answer to that is intelligence. Here we have a ransomware cumulative victim statement. I throw this in there because everyone loves ransomware. I think e-crime as a whole is a problem, right? But it seems boards really like to focus in on ransomware. So from 2023 on, you'll see our respective growth numbers. This is from ransomware.live. So this is an open site. You can go track this anytime you want. We are talking in the tens of thousands of multiple cumulative victims month over month each year since 2023. If another organization in your field is being popped by ransomware, don't you want to know how they were popped and what you can do to not get popped? So definitely something to consider. And then lastly, the lowest breakout time CrowdStrike saw last year from an e-crime actor, so from initial access to lateral movement, was 51 seconds. Can any of you catch anything in 51 seconds? I'm assuming not. Now, I'm not saying that intelligence is going to help you with catching every single lateral movement that happens. The average for this was 48 minutes, mind you. 48 minutes is still an incredibly fast time from initial access to lateral movement for most organizations. But intelligence can help you slow them down or put rocks in their shoes. I like to say part of my job is professionally putting rocks in attackers' shoes. We're never going to stop them. There's too many of them. There's too little of us. I don't have enough limbs, hours, or people in a day to combat the adversaries. I can slow them down fast enough, though, that they trip over something and alert me to their presence. And so that's what our job is, and that's where intelligence comes into play. If you can block the easy, low-hanging fruit IOCs, Tor nodes, Astral VPN, Mulvad VPN, all of these, right? What you have left is you're making it harder for the adversaries to come after you. If you close the windows, they're going to go after someone who has the door that is open. Burnout is inevitable. This is me, real picture. When I turned 26, so definitely only 6 months ago, I was doing incident response for a firm after starting as a SOC analyst and growing into the lead SOC analyst for a managed detection and response firm. And I got sick super, super quickly. I was working 70, 80-hour weeks. I was working high-profile cases involving ransomware clients, and I was dealing with managing peers, managing people who were once peers and who were friends. And I went to the hospital and I was like, hey, I do not feel good. I'm constantly ill. And they're like, great, let's take some blood tests. And they turned around and they're like, hey, so awesome news. You have a brain tumor. Fun fact. And they were like, we don't normally see it in people this young. What is your job? And so we talked about it and they were like, wow, we only see this with EMS or other first responders or military, people in the military. And so burnout is inevitable. And I very quickly learned that if I wanted to have a career involving computers at any point, I had to slow down. Now, some of you who are watching this are in the crowd who are like, yeah, Lauren, you did a great job slowing down. I did not do a great job slowing down. I worked 60-hour weeks instead of 80-hour weeks. But what that taught me was that this is an inevitable case of our world. It is not a matter of, oh, if I get burned out. It is when you get burned out. And when you do, it hits hard and in ways that you couldn't have even imagined. And so it's important that you're taking care of yourself both proactively and reactively. If you're a manager or if you're responsible for people in this crowd or online, it's important that you're taking care of your people proactively and reactively. I have seen managers who are fantastic at it. There's a reason I've been in my role right now for 5 years. I've seen managers who are horrible at it, and why I've seen analysts who have quit the field completely and decided to go be baristas because they couldn't do it anymore. And this is an inevitability of our field. I do want to tell you a little story around burnout. So that first job that I got as a security analyst, I was hired prior to college graduation. And my boss was like, hey, you can hire all of your friends because we need like 6 cheap people to come work in our SOC. And I was like, awesome, I get to hire all of my friends. I'm the eldest sibling, and somehow I still didn't see this coming through as when you hire 6 of your closest friends as a college kid, you are now responsible for 6 of your closest friends as a college kid. And it was a great time. There were a lot of air horns. There was a lot of silliness and ridiculousness, but there was still a mission that we had to accomplish. And I remember one day, this guy who I'd known forever, right? I'd seen him partying in college. I had seen him do amazing things on his tests. I had also seen him in Halloween costumes. Like, it's a very, very cognitively dissonant thing. And he comes up to me. He was super into biohacking at the time. He was like, hey, LP, I'm not feeling super great, and I get really tired after I eat lunch. And so I was wondering, can I bring a cot into the SOC and take a nap under my desk? And I was like, whoa. I mean, no. I can't believe I have to say this, but no. And over the years, I've thought, well, why couldn't he take a nap, right? He was working basically 12-hour shifts when you account for we were on 410s, and he had to have a lunch break in there, right? He was working nonstop. And maybe a full-blown cot system was completely inappropriate. I will give him that. But there were other ways that we could help combat burnout. And the idea of having someone take a nap if they're feeling overly stressed is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Maybe we start with a walk, though, or asking him to take a lunch break outside of the office, something that helps break up that day and break up that stress that he was feeling. I flat out denied him. I still give him a lot of grief about the cot. In fact, I texted him right before this and I was like, hey, I'm telling the cot story. You're welcome. I'm not going to name you. So he gets at least a little bit of anonymity, but it's definitely a thing. I do believe that while a cot in the SOC is probably not the best answer, having a culture that understands that burnout is coming for all of us and can systematically approach that is key. I'm not an advocate of forced fun. I'm not your family. No one needs to be my family. I have enough drama with my own family. I don't need more of you at work. But you spend most of your life with the people that you work with. And we spend most of our life in very stressful situations. And we have to think about ways that we can creatively break that up and help maintain that culture while making sure that we accomplish the mission. You'll see a Sasquatch at the bottom. I have a hidden objective. It's not so hidden anymore because I'm gonna say this now, but I have a colleague who is constantly trying to get a severance package because I don't know if he's so burnt out, if he's just done. But just like Bigfoot, I don't think he's ever going to get that package because he's too good at his job. But a Sophos report just came out, and it kind of encapsulates the feeling of my colleague asking for this package every single day. 76% of cybersecurity professionals have experienced burnout or already are experiencing burnout. 3/4 of us in this room right now have been burnt out or are burnt out. I'm going to gauge to say are burnt out based on no one's laughing at my jokes. So thanks, guys. What I would say is encourage regular breaks. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't eat lunch at your desk if you can help it, even if it's 10 minutes, right? Go see some sunshine. More importantly, create recognition programs. Nothing is worse than being in security and operating in silent, and we never get breached And then your CEO is like, I'm not going to spend as much on security because we haven't got breached. That's horrible. Create recognition programs, highlight the hidden work that's going on with your teams. Send them the conference to brag about the cool hardware hacking stuff that they're doing on weekends. Shout them out on a random Friday of like, hey, you got everything patched. This is awesome. Invest in your growth and development opportunities. Nothing is worse, and I have never seen anything kill a SOC analyst or a security operations center / IR team more than not investing in people and their growth and development. If somebody wants to go into CTI, I will 100% let them go shadow our CTI team. There's no reason to gatekeep that whatsoever. The reality of a SOC is it is a grind, and you're going to have people that want to move on. Some people want to live there for life and they love the analysis and investigation. Some people view it as a next step onto their career. You shouldn't begrudge people and prevent them from developing just because they don't want to stay in a SOC forever. Leverage your technology where possible. It has never been easier to investigate all of the alerts that we're dealing with if your companies are investing in the appropriate resources and technology for your teams and your people. As a leader, my job primarily is to remove obstacles and to identify things that will make their lives easier. I don't always succeed because sometimes we can't get the business case approved, but it is your job to try. AI is out there. It is there to augment our existing work, and it is making things easier for us, whether or not we like to admit it. But also, embrace the suck. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to be knee-deep in an incident and have somebody say, well, you got to look on the bright side. No, there is no bright side. I haven't slept for 72 hours. I haven't showered in 24. I'm drinking Red Bulls and eating gummy bears, and I haven't seen the light of day in a week, right? Sometimes it just sucks, and it's okay to acknowledge it just sucks. That doesn't mean you have to get trapped in it, but it's better than trying to gaslight ourselves into saying, oh, everything's fine, right? Everything's burning down around me. We'll be okay. This is also me every single day. We try to caffeinate and it doesn't do anything but increases your heart rate, and I'm not awake. Here's a fun one. Just like there's always money in the banana stand, there was always inappropriate things in the investigations. And I will say my friends in forensics have warned me about this better than anyone else. I remember when a 50-year-old man came up to me on my first day on the job at CenturyLink, and he said, listen, Lauren, you're going to see some things here. And if you ever can't see some things, you come get me and I'll handle it because I've seen it all. And I am forever grateful to that man because I did see some things. One time I was investigating a malware alert, and I had to go through all of the photos to see what the weaponized PNG was. I had to start a butthole counter for my boss. Do you know what that final counter got to? 36 buttholes I had to see before I saw the weaponized PNG. Nothing. I'm not the same woman. That is the day I lost my innocence. But it is out there. People do terrible things. They do silly things on our networks. It is always out there. This goes in line with the burnout. Unfortunately, you're going to see some stuff that you maybe don't want to see, and it can be trauma-inducing. So the only thing that leadership cares about is money. We all know that, right? We're all on the same page. That's not a secret. Nobody actually cares about protecting the business unless it keeps our shares from going down or keeps them from going up, right? That's not necessarily true, right? Money is the ultimate driver for most of our businesses. That's what the people who make the budgetary decisions, who make the ultimate strategy decisions, care about. It is your job to translate all of the cool, nerdy stuff that we do each day into things that business people care about. Like I mentioned before, there's tons of CEOs who are like, man, we're not getting breached. Lay off the security team. We don't need them. It's fine. And they end up learning that lesson the hard way. If you're doing your job, though, and always selling what your organization is doing, you should be able to avoid some of those difficult decisions. Similarly, after the butthole counter story, about 6 months after that, I decided I was done with incident response. And I decided to start the threat hunting operations and research team, our internal threat hunting team, with two of my good friends at CenturyLink internally. I was 26 years old. I went to the CISO with a presentation and a dream, and they gave it to me. I still don't know how that happened, because I translated it to quantitative business risk and how we would reduce that and how we would save the company money by doing that and how ultimately it would make us better and more competitive as an organization on the market doing that. When you're selling, mostly what this means is have a ton of metrics on a dashboard that people like to look at. Lots of pretty colors, lots of pretty visuals. I am not going to read out everything over here to you, but here are some really good metrics that I have found. I do believe that the mean time to whatever is kind of our golden metric, right? Sums don't tell me a lot in terms of what's happening. The mean time tells me what the average analyst is experiencing in my security operations center. Personally, I'm a huge fan of heat maps. I like to look at when my alerts are being opened by hour of day and by day of week. If you're running a shift schedule and you have all of your analysts loaded into, let's just say 8x5 Eastern time, Monday through Friday, but you have insane amount of alerts happening on Saturday and Sunday nights, you're not distributing your resources appropriately and you're creating more work for yourself. A couple different metrics that I really like, and I'm going to say that I created, and somebody's going to check me on Twitter later and tell me that I'm wrong because that's how they like to do things. But the IC metric, so incidents caught at execution or before. You should be looking at when you are catching incidents in your environment along the kill chain. We want to catch them as early as possible. If 62% of your incidents are caught at command and control, oh Lord, that 51-second breakout time is going to hit you hard and fast at the end of the year, right? So the better we can catch incidents earlier in our attack kill chain, the better off everybody is. Less work for me and you, more cool nerdy stuff and conferences we can attend and do. I like to look at rate of repeat incidents because that tells me, are we doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again? I do have a saying that if you want to go play in the backyard, you need to go pick up the dog poop first. Nobody wants to run around barefoot and stepping in dog poop. So why are you running around and having alerts that don't make sense for your team firing when you could be catching cooler stuff? And then lastly, cost per incident. This is a really big one. Again, everyone cares about money. How do you calculate this? It is unique to your organization, I'm afraid, my friends. You'll see tons of vendors out there who will be like, well, based on the Verizon DBIR, this would have cost you $14 million, and you are welcome for our EDR services. And that's totally valid if you want to buy into that and if that is a metric that helps you communicate to your executives. You should be able to calculate the cost per incident or the cost of avoiding an incident for your organization. There's a really, really good fine story, thank you, European Union regulators, that just came out. So Capita just had a $14 million roughly breach, right? If you're in that industry and you've had similar breaches, it is probably fair to say that if those did not get to that point, you avoided a $14 million fine, right? Same with GDPR fines, all of that. But you can use some of the contextual analysis from your peers. Excuse me. And then you got to produce things. You can't just be like, we're great. Trust me. Money, please. It doesn't work like that. So you do need to produce incident reports. Not only does this help people who are not in security know what you've done, you also create a consistent narrative for what happened over the course of your incident. And one of my favorite things to do now is to go to the people who worked the incident and say, okay, tell me what you did and what was that impact and how did it happen? You should usually have a scribe as part of your incidents, someone taking notes, right? They also need to eat, sleep, use the bathroom, shower. So they're not going to be able to be in that room 24/7 capturing what's happening in an incident. Your responders should have an onus to document their work and be able to translate it back to you. Number one, that helps you with recognition. So you can say, hey, Andy is the one who blocked this IOC and stopped the worm from permutating, right? This is great. Good job, Andy. That's a great call out. But also, if your incident commander or your scribe needed to leave the room, you've still captured that after action, or excuse me, that action. After action reports is the next. You got to do it. If you're not doing it, you are missing out on a whole host of opportunities to make your organization more efficient and improve on things. It also gives you an opportunity to go to the board and say, hey, if you had bought this tool that I told you I needed and then you cut from my budget, we would have caught this 4 days sooner, 40 days sooner, 400 days sooner, whatever it is. There is always something to be learned from an incident, whether it's cleaning up the dog poop in your backyard or buying a brand new house because it has a really shoddy foundation. Presentations are always good. Executives love a deck, man. Like I'm telling you, put a few pretty graphs in a deck, tell a nice little story, you can get just about anything. Daily and weekly statuses, what you do should not be a surprise to anyone. You should be very transparent about what's happening within your program. Not only does it help with the whole like, hey, we didn't get breached, why do we even have you problem? But it opens up opportunities for cross collaboration across your organization. If somebody in AppSec says like, hey, the SOC is working like 500 tickets a month on malicious VS Code extensions, maybe we need to do something about that. If you never told them about that, how are you going to have those efficiencies? Dashboards, we all know dashboards. Tableau is your friend. Create those. And then case studies and war studies. Even if you can't come to a conference and talk about, oh, this one time we went up toe-to-toe with APT1, if you can do those in private intelligence groups or even for internal stakeholders, this is going to buy you a lot more credence and a lot more, I would say, goodwill and cachet with your organizations. Here's a meme I created. It's a little small, but the gist of this is never single out your analysts. I do not care that you closed 40 tickets last month individually. And I'll tell you why I don't care. One time I had an analyst that was so proud of themselves. They closed 5,000 tickets in a month. Can anyone take a guess at what those 5,000 tickets were? Phishing test. They did a combined 5 hours of work for the entire month, and they closed 5,000 tickets. But because the previous SOC manager prioritized number of tickets closed versus impact to the organization or threat stops or anything else like that, this analyst thought they were God's greatest gift to man. And to be fair to that analyst, right, they were taught from management, if I close these number of tickets, I am going to be rated outstandingly. I'm going to be given a gold star. I'm going to get a raise, a promotion. And then they get into a situation where they've never had to work something that didn't have a playbook or that wasn't a phishing test. And now suddenly they're under the gun. So be very cautious about what you actually measure and what you're selling to your executives, because that is what gets stuck. The minute you introduce a metric is the minute it gets measured, and then suddenly your boss is like, well, why didn't you close 12,000 tickets this month and you only closed 8,000 tickets this month? We didn't have a phishing test. I don't know what to say. Quick lightning round, because we're approaching the end and I want to give you all time for comments. So most of what I've talked about has been very process driven. It's been very human focused. There is a ton of stuff from a technical perspective that I have learned over my time in responding that you should absolutely go take a look at if you are not already looking at. Do any of you know if your Microsoft Teams tenant is exposed externally? Yes? That's a lot of crickets. You might want to look at that. So Scattered Spider has loved calling in to externally exposed Teams instances and pretending to be your help desk and say, hey, I'm Lauren from IT. I'm here to help you. You want to do something about that? And it looks legit, right? So people probably shouldn't be able to call into your Teams instances individually, right? Are you allowing users to authenticate from commercial VPNs? If so, you might have a DPRK agent in your very midst right now. Astral VPN is a favorite of theirs. Very easy to proxy and say like, hey, I'm from Salt Lake and they're sitting over in Pyongyang. Do you all think you've secured your cloud control plane well enough? Or have your clients secured the cloud control plane well enough? I'm assuming not. And I'm also assuming most of us have heard about the F5 breach that happened and the 45 plus vulnerabilities that were stolen that were undisclosed. And that if you have a management or control plane exposed to the internet, you're about to have a very bad few months. Having your control plane unsecured is one of the worst ways to get breached at this point. And we know that threat actors are jumping from cloud to cloud. So you're just making it easier for them to hide in plain sight. Are you patching your older vulnerabilities, or have you exceptioned out anything that wasn't CV 2025 or newer? Attackers love everything old. Everything old is new again. LNK files are back for some reason. I'm over it. I feel like I've lived a million lifetimes at this point, but we know threat actors love going after the lowest hanging fruit. And if you are leaving CVEs prior to 2024 unpatched and exposed to the internet, you're just asking to get breached and have an easy lateral movement. Have you established your insider threat monitoring? Anybody hear about all of those fun Cisco insider threat incidences where they do like 30,000 virtual machines on their way out? Or the incident responder who decided to ransom their own company and be a part of the incident response while it was happening? Insider threat is a thing. It is becoming more and more of a thing, especially as we see uncertain economic times come into play. And as we know, threat actors are starting to offer money for access into internal organizations. You are going to need an insider threat program. Are you blocking known bad passwords from being used as passwords in your organization? Does anyone know if their organization allows Utah Jazz 2025 as password? Microsoft has a really helpful tool here called a banned passwords list. It's for AD 2016 or newer, I believe, that you can implement. I'm sure many of you have seen how many times welcome123 is used as a password. Don't give the users the option, please. And then lastly, do you know what your open source software supply chain looks like? I'm assuming most of us had a lot of fun with this over the last 6 months, and we will continue to have a lot of fun with this. Furthermore, do you know what open source software your security tools use? And is fourth party a risk for you? So these are all things that definitely take back and take a look at. These are kind of the emerging technological trends as we go through 2025 here. I'm going to open it up for questions because we have 10 minutes left. And I feel like I've been just doing an hour of stand-up here. I got some laughs, so thank you guys. Any questions? You can shout them out and I can repeat it back so folks can hear. Yeah.
No, is that give you a lot of the?
I didn't catch the last of that.
Does that give you a lot of opportunities to learn from mistakes?
Make. Okay. So, yeah. So the question was, knowing who I work for, does that give me an opportunity to learn from a lot of mistakes of other people?
It's like
that might not be public. Yes. So I wouldn't say that it's a matter of who I work for. It's a matter of the connections that I've made. MMC, so that I'm on the internal side, the customer facing side, very, very different things. And we keep that very secure. I have made it a priority in my life to be in the rooms where people who are responding to the really bad stuff are, in the Slack chats and the text groups and the Signal groups that definitely don't have any reporters in them accidentally added, right? I truly believe that the only way that we can do this is if we're able to talk to each other without the NDAs and without the fear of becoming on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, I will say pitch for Marsh. If you want Marsh Cyber Services, there is a option for that. They do a lot of really great work, and they have a lot of insight that is available to clients based on what they've seen from claim data, but that is not something that's accessible to us internally. Any other questions?
Going from mid-tier management, what was like the one thing that you didn't expect, you didn't see coming, something like the biggest thing?
So the question was going from mid-tier to management. What was something that I didn't expect or see coming? So what I will say is I asked management at the start. So in the SOC, I was not a full manager. I was the lead analyst and basically the adult on duty. I was a lifeguard, make sure people didn't drown for all intents and purposes. When I moved to CenturyLink, I got my first crack at management. And I had the best setup you could ask for. I got to pick the people that worked under me. I got to build a brand new team, and I got to work with two of my best friends at the company. And they made sure I was successful. I also picked like two of the smartest people. But one of the things that I didn't realize would be so difficult is how much I missed the technical side of things and how much I still miss the technical side of things. So those same people, when we started Thor at CenturyLink, now we run Thor Collective and Homage. It's literally a blog / podcast of us just hot taking, threat hunting or threatening stuff nonstop. We're always looking for new people to post. So if you would like to make your start authoring blogs, hit me up after this. And I have some pretty cool swag and stickers. But now my outlet for technical has to be on my own time at midnight to 3 a.m. And it goes so fast. You lose those skills so quickly. And it is very sad. I had to ask an analyst how to pull an email the other day. And I was like, what have I become? So when you're considering that jump to management, and to be clear, being a people manager is not the only progression out there. And if anyone tells you that you have to become a people manager to progress in this field, they're absolutely wrong. There's a ton of leadership roles that you can take in a technical level. You need to make sure that you're really ready for that jump and you're ready to have your technical skills atrophy and not be the smartest person in the room and be okay with that. Yeah.
What are some of your answers, questions on the last slide?
He said, what are some of my answers to the questions on the last slide? So I've already checked if Teams is externally exposed. That is a thing that I'm fortunately very, very worried about. And the thing that I'll say on that one is it depends on the risk tolerance of your organization and whether or not Teams is necessary for client interactions, whether or not you have separate Teams tenants. There is a ton of stuff, but you need to know if that is a threat for you all or not. Allowing users to use commercial VPNs. So all of this I have already checked in my organization, to be super clear. Yeah. How do you solve for it? Yeah. So how do you solve for it? Teams should not be externally exposed unless you have a client need. So like that is carte blanche. I would recommend against that. Commercial VPNs, it is going to be a pain for your users, especially if you're doing like a bring your own device setup, or if you allow contractors to develop in your network and they operate on their own laptops for whatever reason. People love to use commercial VPNs. You've heard every single podcast has a NordVPN ad on it. and it works. People love it. It's super cheap. It's going to make users mad. I would recommend not allowing authentication from commercial VPN. The threat that DPRK honestly right now poses with commercial VPN authentication is too high. Cloud control planes are really, really, really hard to solve for that. You need cloud expertise. And I'm assuming most of us in this room cannot afford the cloud expertise that you need to secure every single cloud control plane out there. I'd recommend engaging services usually for that. AWS has native services that you can engage that naturally they're very experienced in AWS. But there's some other groups like CrowdStrike or I think Palo. I don't know, Andy, you'll have to check me after this, that can help you with control plane settings for cloud. Patching older vulnerabilities is a perennial, annual, recurring problem. You are never going to get to zero. So you need to understand and prioritize what vulnerabilities make sense. In my mind, externally exposed RC vulnerabilities are your biggest risk, and those should be your focus, and then filter down. It's going to be different for every single organization. Externally exposed is where you're going to get in the most trouble, though. If an attacker can go pick you up off of Shodan and say, you've got CVE 2016 12345 vulnerable, it's game over, right? If you end up in a LinkedIn post about like, hey, there's still 65 million ancient big IPs running, right? You don't want to end up on that list. Insider threat modeling is burgeoning on this non-negotiable. Like we talked about how CTI is a non-negotiable part now. Insider threat is getting up there. The challenge you have with insider threat is the complexity with labor laws and works councils and how that appears from a global perspective. Because in France, you can't just go look on someone's computer to see if they're looking at hacking websites. There needs to be a trigger, right? So work with your lawyers on this. If you have an EDR company, one of the majors, a lot of them are doing some light insider threat detections. And I say very light because it's like impossible travel or, hey, we saw this IP was used in a laptop farm, right? And so you've got a little bit of that with either MDRs or with your EDR services. It's not perfect. I would recommend looking at a dedicated model there. Blocking known bad passwords. If any of you are running Active Directory controllers on below 2016 at this point, please see me in the hallway. We need to have a discussion after this. Microsoft has put out a lot of stuff to help with known bad passwords being used. This is kind of like the old CVEs, though. It's a perennial problem. You're still going to have people who create local admins with welcome 123. It's a multi-pronged approach. So technology, awareness, and then you need to constantly be looking for this. For those of you who have seen some of the more recent breaches, you know that secrets are more commonly being put in CRM systems for some reason, or in Zendesk, or in ticket systems. And I'm telling you not to do that. So if your help desk analysts are rotating people's passwords to October 2025 ! And then putting it in your Jira queue, they're going to have a bad time. So same thing as always, technology, process, et cetera. And then open source software. This is a harder problem for you all to solve. I think the number one thing that we can work on is at least inventorying what our software supply chain looks like and what open source is allowed. I think this is going to be one of the defining problems for our industry as a whole over the next 1 to 5 years, depending on if we can get a handle on it. Like with Shai Hulud, the NPM worm, GitHub stepped in and we're like, hey, we got the IOCs that are allowing this worm to propagate. We're going to stop these packages from being uploaded to the NPM package manager. It was after a week and a half and 500 packages had been weaponized at that point. So this is not an easy thing to do. It's also kind of the nature of open source, right? There's no one true owner. We're all in this together. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have enough time to police every single open source package manager and look for weaponized code. But definitely open to having more conversations about how we approach this from an industry perspective, from a corporate perspective, at least know what you're using. And then something like a trusted repository is your kind of golden path forward. So having something like an Artifactory that your developers reference, that you can slow roll or require an N-2 version of a package, anything to prevent the like, hey, I'm going straight to npm PyPy and I'm getting this weapon and automatic updates, and yes, I'm with security. And oh, why is now this calling out to a Bitcoin miner website? Oh no, my computer sounds like a jet engine. So that's kind of the ultimate solution for that. I do know that there's a lot of folks who have issues getting trusted repositories implemented, though. It is a slog, especially if you have developers that like to go really fast and use whatever they want, and they're jumping from Go to Rust to whatever the new language is. Completely understandable. But what I will say is there are a lot of Fortune 500 companies that are innovative with development that are using a trusted repository model. And that's not something that should be ignored.
Phone a friend, yeah, pick poison, nation state or cybercrime?
Said phone a friend, nation state or cybercrime. Which do I like more? Or which do I hate more? I think e-crime is way more interesting than nation state. And I despise e-crime actors more than nation state, primarily because they're all like 14-year-old kids. And like, I'm not loving getting shown up by some kid coming after school and just wrecking people's stuff. But, you know, that's fine. Any other questions? Cool. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.